no secret to keeping the sand together. The science is in the sand itself. This particular sand, because it's a pit sand, it has a square grain. If you would look under a microscope at the sand, the actual grains are a square or a cube shape. Whereas if you look at beach sand or river sand, it's actually a round shape.
So what's better, round or square?
Well, obviously the blocks are better, because if the rounded shape is round because of the erosion of the water, the blocks have been rubbing against themselves for millions of years, and all the edges have been knocked off, so they're a spherical grain. And if you put balls in glue and stack them up, they will stay there, but you take the glue away, balls can't stack on themselves. So hence, when you're at the beach and you add water to your sand, you can actually make a sculpture with water if there's enough moisture in it, but once the moisture evaporates, everything will collapse. Whereas this particular sand, you add water to it for adhesion, but when you actually water evaporates, the blocks stack on themselves because they are square, and you can get some undercuts and you get a lot more detail. So hence you can do much better work and much higher, and you're not fear of it collapsing.
So this is actually desert sand by the look of it?
Yeah, this is a pit sand. It's from the Outback Alice, pit number 2 they called it, but it just comes straight from the ground, no additives. So it's been sitting there for, since God decided he'd make something, and that's basically it. So it hasn't been eroded, so it's still in a square form.
And do you look for good sand like this wherever you work?
Yeah, definitely. You always want to work with the best materials. If it's not available, you would use something else, and you just make do. But if you can get a good quality sand that'll stay together, that's what you really look for. Yes, I mean, with this particular sand, if you push it together like that, because of the fat content or the squareness of the block, you can make a ball, and that ball you can go like that, and the ball doesn't fall apart. Now, you can't do that with beach sand.
There's got to be more to it than that, though.
No.
No?
Just blood, sweat, and some tears.
But making such a beautiful sculpture and making sure things don't fall over, how do you do it?
Yeah, that's probably where the talent comes in. You know how far you can push the sand. You know what you can do and what you can't do. There are tricks to being able to do certain things, like the tractor that I've done today. If I was doing a freestanding tractor, obviously I couldn't do it because I'd have to cut under it and the wheels couldn't support the body. So you make a snowdrift, or you make dirt, or you make an animal in front of it, or that sort of stuff. If you need to make a giraffe with a very, very long neck, then you'd put some supporting structure underneath it, that sort of stuff. So that comes from experience and common sense.
And what's the most challenging thing you've ever made?
I wouldn't say most, but I've done murals. Murals are pretty hard to do 3D, because you do 3D murals, they're not quite three-dimensional around. They're 2D, but they look 3D, and they're hard to carve into. I did a World War I scene where there were two, a Fokker Friendship and a British plane fighting in the clouds, and that was coming out of the frame, and you had to make it look 3D, and that was quite challenging. So that I suppose, murals, 3D murals are probably the hardest.
How long would you spend on something really major?
That took a couple of days. It was quite big. It was about 12 feet high by probably 7 feet wide. Quite high, about 4, up on top of another structure. So it was quite high.
Do you find that you ever get attached to something you've made?
Look, if you're not really, not so much attached, but when you've done a work, especially that like the World War I, or I did an invention pile once, that so much work goes into it, and it looks so good, you think it's a shame that it'll be knocked down and all you've got is pictures. But that's the type of medium it is. The medium is here for people to watch you create it, enjoy it, and then it's gone, and then you may start it again next year. I liken it to cooking.